Hi, my name is Peter Harrison. I'm the president of the Palacios Foundation, and as you may know, we have been participants in the 2021 2022 Google Summer of Code, and we're trying to get into the 2023 Google Summer of Code program. We were initially created as an organization that was trying to see how we could provide software development training services to people on the island of Jamaica. And as time went by, our open source project opened up more and more to people at the international level. And now we have mentors for the various projects that we have coming from at least 6 or 7 countries over the years. And we've decided, as a part of our 2023 initiatives, to have interviews with many of our mentors just to show you the wide variety of backgrounds that we have on the project. So that's really, really good. So today I'm speaking with Eva Sharma, and she has been working with us with the Google Summer of Code for Google Season of Docs last year for us, and now she's going to be a mentor with similar responsibilities as other mentors for the projects that we have. So welcome, Eva.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for introducing me.
So I have to tell everybody that we tried yesterday to have a video with you, and when everything was all over, we didn't have any audio. We had the video but no audio. So now it's the second chance, and hopefully we'll be able to get it better. I noticed when I was looking, I've been talking with the others, and I've been doing a lot of pauses that I didn't think were really great. So I'm going to try to slow down a little bit more right now and see where we can go from there. So Eva, why did you get involved in software development? What was it that really made it interesting to you and wanted it to be something that you pursued for the beginnings of your career?
Okay. So, Peter, from my school time, when we were in school, we had a subject like in computer science, and we were taught a bit of coding, like basic web development, and also that thing really intrigued me how um, a piece of code could change a lot. And while growing up, I really liked coding. And then in India, when we take the stream of non-medical, we give an examination called JEE. So basically, it is kind of an entrance examination for most of the colleges in India, engineering colleges. And computer science is a stream for which you have to score the highest in JEE. So basically, this stream, uh, I was interested in this stream. I was intrigued by the stream, and moreover, it had the height which was required. Like you have to score the highest to get into the stream. So that's why I got into it. But for continuing my journey, like when I got into my college, when I was actually exposed to proper coding, proper programming, so I was genuinely obsessed by it. In my first semester, I was really obsessed by programming. I tried a lot of things. I tried development. I tried data structures and algorithms, like and programming languages. And every aspect, every new thing which I tried fascinated me more and more. And I still try to learn new things. I still try to widen my horizon. And I feel like this stream fulfills my curiosity and it never lets it die. I am like more curious next day. So I feel that I really get along with this stream somehow. And that's why I'm really passionate to work into the IT industry.
So you'd mentioned before that you had early exposure to computers, and that was something that probably spurred you to continue. So explain to us what that first experience was with a computer in your hand. How did you get one, and what were the first things that you tried to do with it?
The first time I got a computer in my hands, I don't even remember when would that have happened. It was somewhere at my house. We had a desktop. So I don't remember that experience. But in our school, with the experience which I mentioned was, in our school we had a subject for computer science, and in the beginning, what our teachers taught was just basic HTML language, and we made really basic websites, like obviously just HTML. But that thing was really intriguing to me because our usual subjects are like read a textbook, learn it, or do some mathematics and just give an examination. But working on computers and like we use websites every day, but learning that how all these things work behind the hood was really like intriguing to me, and I was really fascinated by that. And whatever our teacher taught, I really uh, grasped that well, and I knew that someday somewhere I want to be a part of this thing, like the coding thing and working behind the hood, making websites and applications. So I think that was the starting point.
It's interesting to hear what you're saying, the fact that you had exposure to the computing environment at a relatively early age, and that then provided you with some of the stimulation to continue onwards with it. And then you also mentioned the fact that it was a very highly interactive experience in which you were doing the HTML changes, you could see the modifications almost immediately. And then similarly with programming, you get that reward very, very quickly. And that's one of the areas, or one of the reasons why, in my opinion, software development is a rewarding experience, primarily because you get instantaneous reward, and in many cases, for you to become proficient at it, you don't need a great outlay of money. You don't need a great outlay of
Right.
equipment like other areas of engineering. For example, if you're doing civil engineering, you need to have outlays of brick and steel, concrete, etc., have some experience. Many times you can't finance that from your own resources, and similarly with mechanical engineering, with air conditioning systems, etc. It's nobody grows up building a bridge in the back of their home, right? But people do have the opportunity of doing things in the software development area, which are much more interesting. So let's talk about the school that you're in. Um, Explain to us the way that you got in. So you mentioned that there's this examination process. Did you do you have the opportunity to select the university that you wanted to go to, or is it chosen for you?
Okay, so what happens is, so we are talking about my college, right?
Correct.
Right. So what happens is first we give the examination and we get our ranks.
Hmm.
So there are some like cutoff marks which are required to be in one particular college or university. So you have to clear those cutoff marks to get into your dream college. And after that, I can choose all of the colleges, all of the universities which are below all the which can let me enter with the marks which I've secured. Like
Oh,
there are, yeah.
I see. So once you have your ranking, you are able to go into a university or college of that rank or lower, and
Right.
anyone in that range. Oh, I see. That's interesting. And is that at the national level or just at the state level?
No, no. The college which I'm in is also at national level.
Okay. All right.
And one more thing that, right, go on.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. So one more thing that the streams like computer science, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, these streams also there's a kind of a trend which these streams also have their own cutoff marks according to the university. So as I said that computer science needs the highest marks.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I might be getting civil engineering in a way better college, but I'll get computer science and engineering in a bit lower college because that needs more marks.
I see. I okay. So there's strategies behind getting into the various types of
Yeah.
professions. All right, I understand. That's interesting to hear. Um, Very interesting. It provides me with some context because quite often many of our mentors, many of the students that we have in the program come from India, and and they mention things, and I don't have the context, and sometimes it's really good to have that context and be able to tell others what the context is. So it makes life a lot easier for them. Now, another question that I have, which is something that we see all the time with the Palacios Foundation, is that the exam timing in India between the various universities happens at different times of the year. And so it's very difficult for us to plan activities or even like software sprints with multiple people in the team because they have these constant interruptions with exams. And it seems as if you have midterm semesters, sometimes midterm exams, or mid-semester exams. It sounds like you have, in many cases, like multiple mid-semester exams periods, and then you have the end of the semester finals. And like I said, they don't overlap. They're not at the same time. Is that the case? Is my interpretation of that correct?
Yeah, okay, so first of all, our one semester is of 6 months. So we
Yes.
have 2 semesters per year, right? And each semester has a mid-semester examination and an end-semester examinations. So that makes 4 examinations per year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now there are some government colleges in India, which are IITs and NITs, which are like the top most engineering colleges. And then there are also private colleges, because I told you yesterday that uh, in our year, 16 lakhs, 1.6 million students gave the JEE examinations. And there are only about 1 or 2 lakh seats in IITs and NITs. So a lot of students go to private colleges, and many private colleges are very good as well. So maybe the government colleges examinations might align with each other because they are like set up by the center government and all. But the private universities might have their own calendars, so they might not align with all of others' examinations. So yeah.
Okay, that helps because, like I said, it creates a little confusion with me and with others because we never quite know what's happening, and then it also has an impact on things like the Google Summer of Code when things are actually happening. So you're talking about two. So it's actually two full 6 month semesters. In the United States, I think it's like 4 to 5 month, 4 month semesters, and then there's a short semester in the summertime. So it's actually
Yeah.
it's not really a true semester. It's really more like a third of a year instead of half a year. But in India, it's a full 6 months.
We do get breaks.
Okay.
Like we just include those things in the semester part only. Otherwise, we get 2 months summer break and 1 month's winter break. So you can conclude the same way.
Oh, okay. All right. That's good to know. All
Yeah.
right. So you're now in college. You're pursuing computer sciences, etc. And you said that you have this curiosity, wanting to always learn a little bit more about the environment, etc. What areas are most interesting to you at this moment? There are many technologies that we can think of that are always seen in the news. So, for example, there are things like security-related things. There's machine learning, artificial intelligence. There's various types of applications of software with using these core technologies in various areas of highly developed sciences. So we see things like machine learning being used in biosciences, in agriculture, etc. There are military applications that are used, but there are other broader technologies that are happening all the time. There's huge improvements in things like databases and data structures and things like that. But of all those things that you read about all the time, which one is the one that is most interesting to you, and why?
Okay, so as you named a lot of technologies, there are a lot of powerful and promising technologies in this time, but the technology which most intrigues me is blockchain. So basically, the idea of the entire internet getting decentralized is like really huge. Like, no one specific firm will have the one authority on every person's data. Like right now, Google, Amazon, Facebook, all these firms have the authority to like literally delete your data in one night.
Right.
So yeah, in blockchain, like this can't happen, and no person will have the one higher power to have a person's data, and it will be like publicly available, and the entire system will get decentralized. I think this is a very powerful project and very promising one. So I really look forward to this getting actually happen. So I think blockchain is my favorite technology right now.
And what experience have you had with using blockchain in the coding environment?
Okay, so in my second year, I was in a mentorship program which was organized by the GSoC. So there we made a project called NFT Marketplace. So for those who don't know, NFT stands for non-fungible tokens. And as the name suggests, non-fungible tokens are the tokens which cannot be tampered with, which cannot be deleted. So, and blockchain makes this actually true. So, in blockchain, what happens is that there are thousands of hundreds, millions of computers at the back end which have the same type of like similar data. So, if someone was to delete data from one computer, all the others computers, all the other nodes would like make you aware that the data has been tampered with. There's something wrong with the data, which actually makes it impossible to delete or tamper with the data. So, that's what blockchain does. So we made an NFT marketplace. So people were to upload their things on the website, and that would create tokens which were non-fungible because now they were uploaded in blockchain. So people could create, sell, and buy tokens from a marketplace. And while working on this project, I was introduced to a lot of new things like Ethereum blockchain, MetaMask wallets, and mainly the Solidity language in which you program all those contracts. And all those things were so new and so fascinating to me that I really enjoyed working with it. And this was my like the best experience with blockchain till now.
All right. You mentioned that if you have a data or some sort of object in the blockchain and it's deleted, then there's a notification that goes out to everybody to make it known, and that's a protection against deletion. But explain to us if there's a deletion in the blockchain and it's already happened, getting the notification after the fact is too late. Is there a way to recover that data in the event that you need it?
Okay, so this is the concept behind blockchain that if you delete, supposedly you delete the data in one computer, the other computers will notify you. But this doesn't happen actually because supposedly you want to delete data. If someone's intention is to delete the entire data, they'll have to delete the data through all of the nodes. And this will take a lot of time. And till then, people will get aware. So that's why you cannot delete some data. And if somehow in one nodes the data is deleted, all of the other nodes will correct that data. And that's why you cannot delete data once uploaded on blockchain.
I see.
There are a lot of, yeah,
So there are checks and balances. If you delete it on one
yeah.
node, there has to be justification for it. But I'm assuming that if you have the right key to allow you to do the deletion, then that deletion would propagate. But if you delete it just from one system, it would be self-healing. Is that the concept of what you're trying to say?
Um, the fact which you mentioned about the right key, so
Mm-hmm.
basically a lot of mathematical things are done behind the hood, a lot of hashing things, which I don't know very deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And moreover, deleting the data through all of the nodes will take like a lot of time, which is not very feasible.
Right.
So blockchain actually promises that you cannot delete or tamper with data. So yeah.
Right. Is in what areas do you see blockchain really sorry, really transforming the society? You mentioned finance, but do you see it operating in other areas that are interesting to you?
Okay, so one area where I find blockchain to be really helpful would be to keep medical records because once you upload a person's medical records on blockchain, first of all, it will be publicly accessible, so you can access it from anywhere. And second, uh, since you can't delete it, so the organizations or anything like criminal activity cannot happen. Nothing. That data is secure and safe, and you are like you can be sure that yes, this is right. This is not tampered with anyhow. And the second area where I feel blockchain will be like really helpful is while conducting elections, because we know that somewhere in the remote areas where criminal activities still happen, elections are not very fair, not very foolproof. Some powerful communities might force some weak people to vote for them forcefully. And things do happen, like on very small levels, but things like negative things might happen. Like the system is not very foolproof. So if this thing happens on blockchain, the election systems are conducted on blockchain, so it will be completely fair. All the votes will be visible to the public. It won't be just in one room or whatever. So these two fields, the medical field and conducting elections, I think blockchain is required here.
Based on what you're saying, do you think that with blockchain, in the future, people will start doing elections on their phones using technologies like two-factor authentication so that they don't actually have to go to the polls? They can do it from the comfort of their home.
I believe this is possible. Like, I don't know all the complications of elections, but from my knowledge, I think this is possible. Like, we can have a lot of constraints in the smart contracts and blockchain, and I think this is feasible.
That's interesting to hear. That this is really interesting. I like the discussion. I was talking with Troy Anderson, one of our mentors from Jamaica, and he was mentioning that in Jamaica, software development is really focused on certain verticals, and the vertical industry that he's in right now is finance, and he is working with blockchain applications every day as a part of his job. So if you have interest in learning a little bit more about it, you can talk with him and see what he may have to say. He was very open about the challenges that he had with it. And I think that will provide you with some stimulating conversation. I think that'll be really great. Yeah, you spoke about the blockchain and the interest that you have with it, and some of the applications that you really like to see, and that's really good. So I want to talk a little bit more about where you are where you're from in India, the state, things that are interesting for people to do. And I think that will also provide a little background. Everybody has favorite things that they like to discuss about where they live and people that they interact with on a day-to-day basis. So what would you recommend people to do if they happen to visit the area or the state of India that you're from?
Okay, so I'm from Himachal Pradesh in India, and it's like one of the most visited tourist places in India. It's Himachal Pradesh is actually in a hilly terrain, so the natural views are fabulous here. People actually come to get the views here. Like people come out of the cities to get out of their mundane routines to literally feel the nature in Himachal Pradesh. There are a lot of fun, adventurous activities done in Himachal, like you get to do trekking, skiing, rafting, paragliding, boating, a lot of things. Even I haven't done all of them. And the places which people should visit is Kullu Manali. You get to do rafting there, and there's a lot of beautiful snow there. And people usually visit Himachal in the winter season. And then the capital of Himachal, Shimla, is really beautiful. Moreover, there is also a lot of Tibetan presence in Himachal, and that's why you get to see a lot of Buddha and Buddha temples and monasteries.
Okay.
And the most of I saw them in Dharamshala and McLeodganj. And I can't stop mentioning about the natural and scenic view you get in Himachal.
Okay. Um,
Right.
and so it's a mountainous area. I actually, based on our discussion yesterday, I went on Google Maps and I decided to find the actual area that you're from. So you're up in the north of India that we can see right here,
Right, right, right.
and so you're right up against the mountains. You mentioned that you're very close to Tibet, and Tibet is over here. Nepal is very, very, very close by. Um, so you said that there's a lot of activities in that area, both in wintertime and in the summertime, because you talked about rafting, hiking, and then are there a lot of ski resorts in near where you are?
There are ski resorts in Himachal. You'll get to see them. Like the main tourist spots, like Manali, Dharamshala, Shimla.
Yes.
These places have a lot of adventurous activities.
Okay, I see. The reason why I'm asking is that where I live in San Francisco, and many people go to the Lake Tahoe region, which is a well-known area for snow and skiing activities. And so most people, especially around this time of year, they go there and they always are talking about the types of skiing activities that they do. But Lake Tahoe is primarily um, a skiing area, and there's not really a very deep and profound cultural experience around it. It's on the border between California and Nevada, so there are casinos on one side of the lake, and on the other side it's less commercial. So it's different. And so it's interesting to hear the different perspectives from what you're what you're talking about there. That's um, that's interesting. All right. Um, that is that is really great. So you've been working with the Palisades Foundation as a volunteer for a number of months, and you worked with us before. What attracted you to being a volunteer for the foundation, and then probably even before that, what attracted you to apply to the Season of Dogs for the Palisades Foundation in the first place?
Okay, so for being a part of Google Season of Dogs, um, like it's kind of a culture in our college. Like the senior batch, than us, a lot of students were part of Google Summer of Code and Google Season of Dogs. So we were like really motivated to be a part of this program to see what intrigues so many people to be in this program. And then when the program was released, I got like all the organizations when they were announced. I got through each of them, and when I went to the Palisados Foundation, I really liked the idea for which you guys are working. Like for like helping uh, software people, all right. First of all, as you said, first of all, the foundation worked in Jamaica and then you spread worldwide. So I really liked the idea and I wanted to be a part of it, and that's why I applied in the Palisados Foundation. And when I got selected, I like knew that it was good that I applied into it. The people are really helpful here. Even like before I was selected, when I was like communicating with the community or the mentors, people like while setting up the projects and all, the people were really helpful, and even my mentors were really helpful. And the first meeting which you took, Peter, was like really motivating for all of us. And I thought that yeah, this is a good place to work in. I really like the work environment, so that's why I like the foundation.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say this. I've been working in the industry on and off for various reasons and things, and we decided that we would start this nonprofit organization and do various types of activities around trying to help community-based organizations. And we decided to apply for the Google Season of Docs for the obvious reason that documentation is very good and very important for any sort of activity to be successful. New people coming on the team have to be onboarded or integrated very quickly, and that makes life a lot easier. But in my work world, I've had experiences in which poor documentation has created a very toxic environment, and you never think about it, but um, documentation has a profound impact on the core operation of an organization, especially in the early stages. So I'll explain to you precisely why. Um, Say, for example, you're working in a software development environment and you're doing something. You start off with the concept and you start doing the coding, and that is very, very easy. It's fun. You're working on these new features, etc. The company starts to expand. You bring in a second person. The code base isn't too big, so you can split things up easily, and things work. You're working so quickly that you forget to do the documentation, or it's just not important. Getting the product out is much more important. And then a third person comes. It's a little more difficult, but you can manage. And then things sort of stabilize. Many times companies don't get money in a constant stream. It comes in spurts. So you have some money, you hire some people, you get some things done, and then when you reach a certain milestone, you then get some more money, and then there's another spurt. And so what happens is that the culture tends to change when you go from getting one set of money to the second set of money, because now you have this new influx of a large number of people into the organization. Usually when you have one of these spurts, the new people that are coming in don't have the experience or the background of what you've spoken about or what you have actually coded. And then when they come in, they take a long time to try and get an understanding of what's happening. And you, as the initial people in the project, start saying things like, "Don't worry, I know what to do with this thing. I will just get it done. Don't worry. You just stay there. It'll be just faster this way," because there's no documentation. Uh, then what happens is that in the beginning, this sort of feeling, this knowledge of the core, of the operation, is rewarding. You feel that um, you're being validated every single day when somebody asks you the questions. The fact that you are asked these questions when you're at home is not such a problem, because if you feel more validated. But then after a while, there's nothing that you can do when you're not being able to not being called by somebody about something because of this lack of documentation. And so what happens is that after a while, if you get a lot of these sorts of calls, you then find yourself resenting the company that you work for. And that now means that every single call that you get is now a pain. It's distasteful, and that new attitude that you have towards it gets reflected in the way that you respond to people when you're getting this stuff, when you're getting the work done. And so you start to get the quintessential stereotypes of um, of startups in which they become dysfunctional. People are constantly complaining, telling people that they're idiots, that they're stupid, they don't know, they can't do these things, not realizing that the documentation has been one of the core causes of the destruction of the culture of the organization. And so I really want to make sure that documentation is really, really, really important. I also had another experience early on, maybe about when I first came to the United States around 2000, 2001, in which I wanted to understand Linux as one of the operating systems. Linux was new at the time and nobody really knew what to do about it. But at the time, Linux was not documented very well. And so not just was Linux poorly documented on the internet, but it was also poorly documented in books. And so I tried myself to write web pages about how to use Linux. And eventually that led to me being accepted as an author for a book publishing company. And I published a book on the operations of Linux. So for me, I realized that documentation is really, really important, because it can be transformational in the way that an organization is run and operated. And so the Google Seasonal Docs is a very, very important aspect of what we are trying to do. So long answer, but it's very interesting about that.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about the Passives Foundation. We've been talking about some of these other things. One of the things that I always wonder about is the ways in which people. Let me just think about this a little differently. Okay, based on the experiences and in your workplace, and also in other areas, what do you see are one of the key challenges that have to be overcome in an open source project? So we spoke about documentation as one. Based on what you've seen with the Passives Foundation, what things need to be done well, and what things could we as a foundation be doing better to improve the experience of people that want to become a part of it?
Okay, so basically, while working in an open source organization, first of all, since it's an open source organization, a lot of diverse people are working on it, and you have to collaborate with all of them. So, like that teamwork, the managing to be in a team and collaborating with like different diverse people is kind of a challenge. Like in our organization as well, there are people from very different time zones. Like it's morning for you and it's late night for me. So sometimes like connecting and collaborating with people, getting on meeting calls is also kind of a challenge. So you have to find the middle grounds for that. And I believe that if people are like motivated enough to work for the organization, so like middle grounds are not that tough to find. You just have to like be willing to do it. And then in an open source organization, like contributing to this program, first you have to set up the project and understand the entire project, understand the code, and then you have to understand the work culture as well, the entire community. Like, how do you approach your seniors, your managers? And you have to get adaptable to that environment. So, what I feel is what an organization could do is like motivate the volunteers to be the part of the organization. Like weekly meetings, like scheduled meetings, are really important for that. Not weekly, once in two weeks or however is suitable, but proper deadlines, proper scheduled meetings are really important so that the volunteers know that their work is being monitored. And like if they are a part of the organization, then they have to work for the organization, and it's like they cannot leave their managers hanging.
Right.
And moreover, when those weekly meetings, when those scheduled meetings happen after the technical talks, after the meeting, like important talks, some a bit of time should be like reserved to know your peers, to know your colleagues better. Like we can talk about anything which is non-professional, like our lives related, so that we get to know our team members, our managers better. And this will happen, those volunteers, those members which who hesitate to approach to the seniors, to their managers, who are like kind of shy to do that, in those non-professional talks they will open up to everybody. So I think these small initiatives sometimes really help some people.
So you're talking about onboarding and the importance of it. Have you had any good onboarding experiences in the past that you'd like to talk about?
All right, so when I was in the mentorship program of the GSoC, so what the mentorship program was about, that it was a 6 months program, and it was a program for girls. And they, first of all, they taught a lot of things to us related to this field, like the things which we should be knowing, like object oriented programming, DSA, operating systems, and a lot. Other than that, we had a lot of insights of how to get into the corporate world, what are the things which are different in like our college, our university environments, and in the corporate world. And all of these um, teaching things aside, there were some happy arguments. So our like mentors, those speakers gave us some like some fun activities to do, and those were the times when we actually bonded with our team members, the people, the speakers who were there, and that onboarding process was like really fun. We felt that we were a part of that firm, we were a part of that company. And yeah, so that experience was really good for me, and I thought that the work environment, the work culture they had was, which something every company should have.
And so it sounds as if when you are experiencing this stuff, you were actually on site in the organization to experience these things. Uh, how how have you heard people do similar types of activities in terms of bonding and onboarding when the company is completely remote? So, for example, in the case of the Palisados Foundation, we're 100% remote. There's no real office, etc. But there are many companies that have had to onboard people throughout the period completely online. And I'm sure you must have friends who've had similar experiences. How do you how do you create that culture um, when there's no actual physical contact with people?
Actually, Peter, when this mentorship program was happening, there was that COVID period.
Okay.
So it wasn't on site, it was remote, and all of these things were happening online in meetings only.
Ah, I
There
see.
were meetings when all of the mentees were on the meeting and the speakers were there. And yeah, we just talked. There were online fun events. And I
Okay.
think this offline uh, experiences is a bit better than online ones, but we can actually make the online experiences uh, good as well.
I see. Okay, that's good to know. Um,
Right.
all right. So you know what we haven't spoken about. So we talked about Himachal Pradesh, and you spoke about the various types of activities that you can do, the cultural aspects and the snow, the hiking, those sort of outdoor environmental type things, and the fact that the state seems to be um, one in which there's a lot of nature that people can enjoy. But surely there must be other stuff. And we spoke very briefly yesterday about some of the foods that are popular where you live. Could you explain to people like which ones are your favorites and why?
Okay. So one of the foods which I really like is siddu.
Hmm.
So, Siddu is basically kind of a local dish which is made using wheat flour, and you eat it with ghee. Ghee is a dairy product.
Right.
Right. Like the preparation time of this dish is very long,
Oh,
but
wow.
it tastes as good
Okay.
as the time. Um, the second thing which I would like to mention is it's not a dish, it's kind of like a thing which you do is dham. So what it's kind of like when people celebrate, there's a dham, and a lot of people come to your house to eat, and a lot of dishes are served. Like you with rice, a lot of pulses are there, sweet dish, sour dishes, like a lot of things. It's kind of a celebration, and whenever if you come to Himachal, you should attend dhams.
Yeah, are there special reasons for them? Is it like for a birthday or an anniversary, or do they just say we're going to have one because it's Tuesday? How does it how does this work?
So it's like whenever you want to celebrate, be it
Okay.
birthdays, be it anniversaries, or maybe you want to celebrate Tuesday, you can organize a dham. People will
Okay.
come to eat.
Okay. Well, of course, yeah.
Right.
Free food is always it's always great. All right.
Exactly.
Okay, I see. Um, This is really interesting. Um, uh, I'm sure you've visited many areas in India. Outside of Himachal, which parts of India have been most interesting to you in your visits that you may or may not have had?
Okay, so first of all, in my defense, I've only visited the northern hemisphere of India. So
Okay,
there are a lot of beautiful things in the other parts of India, but I can only talk about the northern hemisphere.
okay,
So, um, first of all, Punjab, it's like a neighboring state with Himachal. It's really famous for its food. So it's like the place where you eat food doesn't matter. It can be a big hotel or a restaurant or a very small shop. The food will be really tasty in Punjab. Like they put a lot of efforts in food.
okay.
So yeah, if you want to eat, you better go to Punjab. And then there is Jammu Kashmir. It's like again a hilly tourist place.
Right.
Kind of same vibes as Himachal, but I really love hilly areas. Take me wherever you can.
Oh, okay. I see. Uh,
Right.
I see you like areas that remind you basically of home, which is always good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like, yeah.
All right.
Um,
I think I think that's all I can think of for now. Do you have any questions for me?
okay, so Peter, as you have told us, you have worked in a lot of places. You have changed your streams as well. So you're a really experienced person. So what advice would you give a 20-year-old person who's just entering into the IT industry, just entering into the corporate world?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you asking me this question before. One of the first things that I would do with anybody that's going to be entering the work world is I'd recommend them a book that I happened to see in a store one day, and I just happened to buy it. It's called The First 90 Days. The content of the book is not very, um, each of the things that it talks about is not very insightful, but as a whole, it really is. And what it does is that it tries to make you think about the things that you want to be doing when you start a job in the first 30 days, then what you need to be doing in the second 30 days, and then finally in the last 30 days of that 90-day period. And so it talks about things that you want to do during the initial stages of the orientation, uh, trying to get an understanding of your manager, all the peers, who are the stakeholders, and the motivations that they may have. It also helps you to broadly analyze the type of organization that you're in. Is it a fast moving company? Is it a slow moving company? And what are the strategies that many of these organizations do in order to be successful? And then from there, it talks about, for the second 30 days, how to start working with the initial projects that you may have, and setting yourself some goals. And then in the last 30 days, it talks about really settling in and getting where you want to be. And so it's very, very, very useful. One of the things that I want to also emphasize with people is that they should have regular meetings with their managers. It's very, very important. Even if your manager has 20, 30 reports coming to them, make sure that you are available. And there are a number of reasons for this. I've been thinking about this topic for quite some time, and one of the way there's probably only one major way in which people get fired from an organization, and that's usually because somebody in a management position gets an unpleasant surprise. And so that could be the CEO. They say that they're going to have sales of 100%. The sales are only 4%. That's an unpleasant surprise. They need to make sure that things are corrected. One of the ways in which that is done, they need to cut costs, and then people get laid off and fired. There are people who work on various types of projects. They don't let their managers be aware of what's going on. By the time that things are getting really, really bad and unrecoverable, you now tell your manager what's happening, and then there's nothing more they can do. they get an unpleasant surprise, they are disappointed in you, and ultimately you may be put on a performance improvement plan and then maybe even fired. And so there's some of these things that you have no control over. You don't really have all that much control over the CEO, but you have some control of managing up to your manager. And so you want to make sure that anything that you find that could be of importance in terms of the performance of the team or the performance of, or your performance is always front and center in the minds of your manager. And so that's really important to have. The manager should always have a current and relevant understanding or impression of you, and that's always good to have. Another thing that you also have to remember, and in some cases it may not be a pleasant experience, but you should also try to, especially in the very first years of your career, that you're probably going to be managed, in many cases managed by somebody who's not an experienced manager. And that can create some issues. When first-time managers have a very, very difficult job. In many cases, they used to be a part of the team. They have friends on the team. They go out to dinner and lunch together. They go and play games together. And then one day, for some reason, one of them gets promoted. And all of a sudden, that person gets transformed from being a friend to being a manager who now has to do a performance appraisal. And so that can now create new tensions within the relationships. And so that can create tensions within the dynamic. And that can complicate the relationship that you have with your manager. Then on top of that, first-time managers are experiencing for the first time getting to understand managing from the manager's perspective, in which they have managers above them saying that they need to have certain things done. And so they now have these two conflicts in which they're conflicting with their friends, and then also they're conflicting with their managers because they're saying, well, when I was in this position before as an individual contributor, this was the situation, now you're telling me something else. And so they have many, many different bosses from below, bosses from above, and then they also have bosses from the sides. And it's always good to have that relationship with the manager, to understand the various forces that are pulling and pushing them around, and that's really, really important. And we didn't mention this in our last meeting yesterday, the failure that I'm so sorry to talk about. But if you're going to be working in a large organization, like you mentioned DE Shaw, yeah, which sounds like it could be a large organization, and this may be related, probably more applicable when you have more face-to-face type operations, but it could work when you're completely remote. Remember, I told you that you could be working in a field or an area in which you just accept the job because you want a job. So, for example, Google goes out and hires dozens and dozens of engineers. People are so happy to work with Google that if Google says you're going to be working over in this particular area, you just say, yeah, I'm working for Google, I'm going to go and do it. But that area of the organization may not be what you want for your career. And so you want to have a change. And sometimes it's really difficult to do the changes because your manager is going to be saying, well, I need you for these various things, etc. And so what sort of strategies can you have in order to transfer out of your group when you're faced with this thing? You don't really want to leave the company because it's Google and Google pays well, it has all these other things, but you don't feel that there's a good fit with your group, and it could be no fault of yours or no fault of the group. It's just that you just have bad luck, and there's some other area, new technologies come in, and you want to move it over into something else. So one of the strategies that you can do is to identify the area, the group, the team that you want to work with, and you go and talk with a manager over in that area and just say, look, I want to have some coffee or tea with you, or whatever it may be, lunch. And you just ask them and tell them, I'm interested in working with your group. I'm not, it's an area that I have some interest in, but I can't quite put my finger on it. And just ask them, like, what are the big challenges of the organization that you're working for, or your group? And in almost all cases, the manager will tell you so much information. Sometimes you are probably the first person who's ever asked them that question. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that you are somebody that's completely outside of the chain of command. So they can talk to you about these things without them feeling that there's going to be a lot of repercussions. And this is quite often the case, and they'll tell you everything within reason, but within the constraints of that reasonably short meeting. Could be half an hour to an hour. And what you do is that you make note of all the things that are of concern to this person. And then at the very end of the meeting, you say to them, is there anybody else on your team that I could talk to about some of these challenges? And they say, yeah, sure. Talk to this person, this person, this person, and this person. And you go and you talk to all of those people and you ask them the same question, like, what are the big challenges? And you have a discussion with them in the same way. All of those meetings, you don't realize it, but all of those meetings are informal interviews.
Right.
So what you do is you talk to all of these people, and you do it in a way that is extremely professional, and you go one by one, and you take note of all the things that they say are wrong. You don't write it down in front of them because they're going to get suspicious, right? But you keep it in your brain. And then you go home, and then you write an email to the manager. And the manager says, and you say in the email, I really liked talking to you about these things, really want to work on your team, and I want to work on these challenges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And make sure that some of those challenges are ones that the manager didn't tell you about. So you send them this and say, look, I want to work on these areas. And the manager comes back to you and says, this is really great, but we now have to create a job description for this role. And then you can say, sure, that's fine, but make sure that the person also needs to know about doing 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, right? That bullet list in your email is going to be the job description. You wrote your own job description. So who has the best chance of getting the job?
The person who wrote the mail.
That's right. So this is a strategy that you can use when you're working in a very large organization to try and see how you can transfer from one group to another. And it has worked for me in a number of cases. And I moved around in Google. Sometimes I moved before my manager even said, yes, I should move. I don't recommend that to everybody, but but you can use this as a strategy to be very, very helpful in what you want to achieve. So that is a good area that I think would be exceptional. I'd mentioned this to you before, that one of the ways in which you can also excel in an organization or in a company or whatever it may be is to be first, best, or different. And that is something that I heard from a country and western singer that visited Jamaica when I was younger. And it really does make sense. Many organizations and many people who are first to the market have a really big advantage. So companies that have those sorts of first mover advantages that come to mind. I don't want to do modern examples, but you can think of people like Levi Strauss with denim jeans, and you can think of the Ford Motor Company being one of the first motor car companies around. In terms of modern banking and modern management systems, there's the General Motors was one of the first people to do actual management training. All of those things that make people or things first are important. And then you can also be best at what you want, which is very obvious. Everybody wants to be the best. And then there needs to be a differentiator as well, that you can work with. So, um, and you have to tie those first, best, and different with the age old, um, I don't know what you call it, compromises of engineering, especially with in tech. It can be fast, cheap, or good. Things can be fast, cheap, and good, but you can't have three of them. You can only have two. So it can be fast and cheap, good and whatever, and so you need to keep all of those things in mind, and keep that in context. So, for example, when I was starting my company, we we realized that we want to be first, best, or different. Um, we decided to be first in what we're doing. We've tried to improve the performance of the services that we had, and that was a differentiating factor. And we wanted to be best at it in a way that could be manageable. And because we're a small company and we had a very, 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 very focused approach of what we wanted to do, that we had a vision that was very, very, very constrained, we could attempt to be most of those three things all at the same time. And we've been very, very, very good at it. So that's been another area in which I think would be very interesting. Another factor that I would also recommend to people is that they try as much as possible when they're working in the work world to think about ways in which they can maximize their lifetime earning potential, and think of things like that. So not all jobs are going to be very, very pay very, very well. Um, or some jobs are more interesting from a personal satisfaction perspective. People doing volunteer work, helping the needy, etc. This is not necessarily for those sorts of people, but potentially too. But many people will go into a job because it's going to be paying them well now, but don't analyze the prospect of them not having opportunities to expand. And so when you're thinking about taking a new job, sometimes you may want to take something that pays a little less because you're thinking about the long-term goal. If I take this job that does less in a new and emerging industry, then the potential for that industry to grow and me growing with that industry at the same time is much better. So always think about that prospect. How can you maximize your wealth? Not necessarily in a very rapacious way in which everybody else has to die so that you can get money, but think about it in a way in which you can do it in a very manageable way. So that's another thing that I think people should also take into consideration. I also recommend, and I didn't mention this before, but I also recommend doing volunteer work. And the reason for doing volunteer work, just volunteer in a regular way, and the reason for this is because it introduces you to people who are not necessarily in your industry or not necessarily having your perspectives, and that now allows you to expand your horizons and do new things. It also challenges you in many cases to new ways of interacting with people and motivating people, in which power is not the motivating force. And so when you're a manager, you can say, do this, and the implicit understanding is that if you don't do it, you could be fired, right? In a volunteer situation, do this or you'll be fired has no meaning whatsoever. They can just walk away and they don't care, right? And so how do you manage people in such a situation? Well, what I have learned over the years is that I try as much as possible to be as open as possible, try to be as fair as possible in whatever I do. I try to have very little ego. People can talk to me and listen to them, and I try to be as objective as possible. These are skills that are very useful in the work world as well. How how do you generate loyalty without power? That is the key. And you do that through consistent interaction, concern over the people that you're working with, and and but constructive, fair, and firm evaluations of people. So, for example, many times with the Palisades Foundation, we have people who make mistakes on some of the pull requests. And I asked them, like, what was the motivation for this? Why did you do it this way? This is not really acceptable. Don't worry about having made the mistake. I want to understand why the mistake was made in a relatively non-judgmental way, so that people feel that they can experiment to some degree, but knowing that they don't want to do that thing again. And so that can also be helpful. Volunteering provides you with a way in which you can practice these sorts of skills without having the threat of it having an impact on your career. And so you can use those skills as a part of your personal development in many different ways. I was just talking to my wife yesterday. She went and did some volunteer work for an event for people with disabilities. And she was paired with somebody who was deaf and also had Asperger's syndrome and was non-communicative. So this is somebody who you can't communicate with using regular things, and though they can talk occasionally, they don't. They use signals, and so that now creates new challenges. How do you create a relationship with somebody? How do you interpret these things? And so she was talking to me about that experience, and so these are things that you don't get in a day-to-day basis, but it does provide you with challenges, and I really, really recommend people that they do stuff like that. So those are the things that I can think of that I would provide people with advice on. We spoke yesterday. Were there any other things that I had mentioned that you think I should also include with what I just said? Is there anything that I
Okay,
missed?
so yeah, you did. My main reason of asking this question again was so that we could record your answer because it's really insightful. So yesterday you did mention that when you are like going to devote yourself completely into some work, you should actually consider what your partner wants from you, like the minimalistic expectations.
That is how could I forget that? That is that is so true. Okay. Yeah, you're very right. When you're working in a new environment, whatever it may be, like in a new job, etc., it's really, really important to ask your partner, whoever that may be, what is the minimum you expect from them, and you ask that question in a very open way, so that you can have some sort of dialogue. And you need to get from them what that absolute minimum is, because more than likely, that is what they're going to get. And so if you set the minimum, you can say somebody has a justifiable reason to say, look, you're not even meeting the minimum that we discussed. And so you make sure that you go above the minimum in order for this relationship to continue. And that really, really, really helps. When I was starting my company, I did the same thing with my wife. I said, "Well, what's the minimum? It's the minimum you're going to get." She thought I was being, she thought I was being a little bold when I asked the question, but I knew what was going to happen. I knew that I was going to be working 16, 17, 18 hours a day, multiple months at a time with young children, and that just didn't work. And so she said that I would have to at a minimum, drop the children off or pick them up from school, be at all their sporting events. And she wanted to make sure that on the weekends for lunch on Saturday, lunch on Sunday, that I was there. I could go to work in the morning, but make sure that I'm there for lunch, have lunch, talk with us. Lunch is not going to be half an hour. It's going to be like, it could be an hour, 2 hours. Don't think that this is just going to be eating a sandwich and leaving. It's going to be longer than that. And then go back to work and do what you have to do. And I really, 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 I can't express how hard I tried to do that. And that has been really, really good for the situation that I found myself in. It worked very well with me when I was at a number of these companies in the past. When I'll give you a good example. When I was at Netflix, I was on the team that launched video on demand in the United States. So the very, very first video that went on the air was my network design. And so there were months and months of me being unable to see family, etc. But those requirements were still there. These were the minimums. And with this new company that I have, that has been very important. So yes, yes. People don't talk about this when they are describing their successes in industry and in life. They tend to talk about visions. They tend to talk about relationships with partners and businesses, etc. But the last thing you want when you come home from work, because work generally tends to be stressful, the last thing you want is to be coming home to another stressful environment. And so home needs to be the refuge. You don't want work to be the refuge. That is a bad situation, right? And so it's very important for you to keep that in mind when you're working in the work world. Thank you so much for reminding me about that. That should have been number one. I think when I spoke to you the last time, that might have been number one, but now it's the last one. So we end on the high note in this discussion. Thank you for reminding me. Thanks very much, Eva, for the opportunity to talk with you. Thanks for being a member of the Palacios Foundation. Thanks for volunteering to be a mentor. We always look forward to having great collaborations, and I think 2023 will be one of those years in which we remember it as the year in which the Talawar application really, really took off. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me here.